Jan Crawford, thank you for that. We want to bring in Brookings Institute Senior Fellow and Co-Director of the Brookings Center for 21st Century Security and Intelligence, Michael O'Hanlon. He joins us now from Washington. Michael, Happy New Year, first of all. Let's begin with these potential changes to U.S. intelligence agencies under a Trump administration, including the news that the president-elect is considering downsizing the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. What do you make of that?
Well, you know, you can debate these things either way. The basic idea to create that office was frankly debatable from the start. It separated the CIA director with his or her operational capabilities from the overall oversight of the intelligence community. Some people thought that was a bad idea, that essentially weakened the CIA director. Other people thought maybe it was a useful way to create this new office. But it was one more layer of bureaucracy in a community that already had about 16 agencies. Now, some degree of disagreement is actually healthy when you're talking about analysis or prediction. But you want cooperation, obviously, on operational activities, on gathering intelligence, gathering information. So you can debate these things different ways. The bottom line, though, is it's always disruptive to create new structures or to dismantle or to reassign responsibility. And so I would suggest that the president-elect think hard about the desirability of really going through yet one more round of a new architecture being created, because we've had a lot of that already since 9/11. Some of his concerns are certainly understandable and even legitimate, but it's also the nature of intelligence that you're going to have uncertainty and have debate, and a lot of that's healthy.
So if he does remove the Director of National Intelligence, would that have a significant impact, do you think? I mean, the whole purpose of this position is to make information from all the intelligence agencies more usable. What sort of impact could it have if you just sort of erase that position?
Well, I think you would have to do it, first of all, with the Congress by statute, because as you said earlier, it was created by statute. But let's assume that he convinces Congress to do that. Then you're going to have someone else play the role of overseeing the overall intelligence community, and that's probably going to revert back to the CIA director the way it was for many years. Then the important question becomes, how do you empower other leaders in the intelligence community so they're not entirely subordinate to that CIA director when there's a disagreement? And so it's almost more making sure the red team, the team B, the dissenting voices get heard. And I don't think an architecture guarantees that or prevents that. So frankly, I'm not that concerned about where the debate goes. I think you could make whatever case for or against this DNI office. But I'm a little skeptical that, you know, one more round of changing the architecture is going to be worth the trouble or the time or the distraction, because it takes people away from doing their day-to-day jobs focused on the overseas threats.
Michael, today's Senate hearing comes as the president-elect continues to cast doubt on Russia's role in the hacking of the U.S. election. Could we see evidence presented in this hearing today that gives him no choice but to pivot on this issue? And I should just point out to our audience that just in the last couple of minutes, the president-elect has tweeted and said the dishonest media likes saying that I am in agreement with Julian Assange. Wrong. I simply state what he states. It is for the people to make up their own minds as to the truth. The media lies to make it look like I am against intelligence when, in fact, I'm a big fan.
Well, good. I like that tone a lot better than some of the recent messages from Mr. Trump. But I also think that, in a sense, people have been inflaming this issue. There's been almost too much discussion of it by Trump and by all of us. And frankly, you know, some of the critiques of Mr. Trump's reactions to intelligence findings have been a little harsh. I mean, for example, going to a different issue, when Trump didn't want the president's daily brief during the early weeks of the transition, who cares? I don't care. I mean, he wasn't commander-in-chief yet. What he really needed were deeper dives on issues. He didn't need a president's daily brief, but he turned that down, and all of a sudden he was beaten up for supposedly being outside of the acceptable mainstream of how you handle this stuff. Now, on the hacking, that's different. Russia pretty clearly is guilty. But I think Mr. Trump has a right to see the evidence. And also, we should be clear, as I think Senator McCain and others have been, that blaming Russia for what they've done is not the same as denying Trump his victory in November in the election. But those two issues were sort of conflated at first. And so you understand, you could almost predict that Mr. Trump is going to get a little bit bristly about that kind of seeming discrediting of his own electoral win. So I think, you know, there's a way out of this if we sort of calm down, look at the evidence, figure out how to make sure it doesn't happen again, and just take the issue seriously in a forward-looking fashion.
You make a great point, Michael, that perhaps the criticism of the president-elect not wanting to receive those daily intelligence briefings was perhaps a bit harsh. I wonder, though, when it comes to the intelligence operatives, the people who do the daily work, and I'm not just talking about those that, are in the clandestine services, for example, at the CIA, but those who do the analytical work. Is there a sense from perhaps the intelligence community that the president-elect may not be appreciative of the efforts that they are doing? Because he cited the weapons of mass destruction debacle during the lead up to the Iraq War, which is a valid point on the president-elect's part.
Yeah. Well, my conversations with intelligence community personnel, sure, there's some concern. I mean, Mr. Trump has broken a lot of China in his views on U.S. foreign policy in the campaign. But there's also a recognition this is not the first time that we put the intelligence community under a microscope, and it's not the first time that a president or president-elect has rethought how to receive intelligence, whether on a daily basis, in written form, from the Director of National Intelligence, through his National Security Advisor. All these different options had been there before. So I think a lot of people who have been around a while are going to just sort of roll with the punches and see what happens and not worry too much just yet.
Michael, let me ask you one more question before you go. Let's talk about, these confirmations. We have Rex Tillerson coming up. He's going to be grilled. And in light of these issues with the intelligence community, how do you think that's going to go? There's a report in the Washington Post that indicates that maybe Rex Tillerson, behind closed doors, as he's meeting with senators, may be talking tough about how the U.S. should be dealing with Russia. That's what he's saying behind closed doors. We don't know what he's going to say in public. How do you think things are going to shake out?
It's a fascinating question. Part of the desire by Trump and Tillerson to get along with Russia is healthy, because some of the issues we have with Vladimir Putin, who's not a nice guy, but nonetheless is acting in a way that's very consistent with longstanding Russian interests on some issues. Some of this antagonism feeds on itself. And it's also over places like Syria, where it's not as if we either have a vital, long-standing American interest or where we had a great policy that was working so well prior to the Russian intervention. In other words, we should be able to manage or defuse or at least deconflict our basic approaches on some of these issues with Russia. It's not going to be easy. There are a lot of difficulties, and Putin is not a nice guy. But, the dynamic of antagonism that we've often had in the relationship is unhealthy and perhaps even somewhat unnecessary. So in that sense, I welcome Trump and Tillerson looking for a way to see if they can't get along better with Putin, as long as they're not naive about it, as long as they are aware of the bad things Russia's been doing too. So it's striking that balance that's going to be crucial, and that's why I too will be watching Tillerson's every word in the confirmation hearings.
All right, Michael O'Hanlon of the Brookings Institute. As always, sir, we appreciate the analysis. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.